This video was brought to you in part by the supporters of the AMTV Patreon. Thank you. Hello everybody and welcome back to AMTV Radio. This is the podcast where I'm joined by a very special guest each time and we chat about whatever we want to, quite frankly. And this time I am joined by someone who's been doing YouTube for quite a long time now. I've delved back into the archives and I'm sure we'll bring... Oh, everyone says that. But today I am joined by Elliot from EMS Productions. How you doing, Elliot?
Yeah, I'm really good, thanks. Yeah, it's great to get on and chat about all things, you know, my channel, Doctor Who, all that. It's really great fun. So thanks for having me on.
Not a problem, mate. Not a problem. And like with, I guess, a lot of the guests I have on who are, I guess, particularly those in, like, you know, the Doctor Who sphere, the WhoTuber space, I'm sure some viewers are already familiar with yourself. But for those who maybe aren't, for those who might have never heard of your channel before, do you just want to tell us a bit about yourself and just your channel in general?
Sure. So, well, obviously I'm Elliot, in case you didn't know, and my channel is called EMS Productions. It's basically just a Doctor Who YouTube channel. I've been doing it for about, well, I think my face first appeared on YouTube about 5.5 years ago now. I did I was big on Doctor Who music before that, doing unreleased music and soundtracks. That's kind of how I think I first got a few subscribers, and then decided actually I quite want to talk about Doctor Who on the internet. That's actually quite a fun thing to do. So why not? I've got a YouTube channel. Let's just start doing it. And that's kind of where it all started, really. Around that was actually 2016. So a year without Doctor Who, I spent talking about Doctor Who. So that was probably not the best time, but you know, I made it work. And then Series 10 came around and Jodie and all that. So it kind of just built off that and gave opportunity to do it. So yeah, that's kind of the basics. Obviously, I do a lot of reaction videos with my soon-to-be wife Megan, who is also in this room, just over there somewhere, hiding away. Yeah, she's hiding over there. And obviously, that's probably the thing that most people might have heard of the channel for, is that, you know, it's been quite a hit. I think some of them have got over 50,000 views, which has been pretty crazy. I think End of Time Part 2, as you'd kind of expect, got over 50,000 views. So that was really, really cool. And yeah, so just lots of really just chatting about Doctor Who, really. That's just, you know, it's really fun to do, theorize with people, you know, lots of news videos, reviews, discussion, all that kind of thing is kind of the basis of my channel, really. Yeah.
No, that's ace. And it's funny that you said in 2016, you know, the year without Doctor Who, pretty much. You spent a lot of time. I feel that's what us fans do. The gap, I feel like it's almost like we have to. It's like a compulsion. Like we have to keep it going.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, I almost feel like sometimes when Doctor Who's not on, I end up talking about it more because there's not actually the show to talk about. So we find other ways to, you know, talk about classic Who or whatever. It's great fun. And
I guess there's so much of it, you know, of course, outside of the TV show that it just you could go on forever. But as mentioned at the start, I do this with all my guests who are on YouTube channels. I like to scroll through. You know, I like to see what's been uploaded, and your very first public video. I say that because I've had it with guests where I say, "Oh, so your first video," and they go, "Well, it's the first video that's public." But so your first public video, I believe, is a bit of gameplay, bit of F1 2011. Is that right?
Gosh, yeah. I mean, I'm big into F1 still to this day. And yeah, I think it was at a period of time where I thought, you know, let's stick my terrible digital camera in front of my terrible TV. And then I can't even remember. I think I'm talking over it. I can't remember if I am, to be honest with you. But yeah, that wasn't really what I'd say I was really a YouTuber. I was just putting stuff on the internet for the lulz, really.
So yeah, for the lulz. Yeah, it's that innocent time, isn't it? When I think us, because I think, you know, I think we're around the same age, like that generation, sort of, I guess, not just discovered YouTube, but also was like, we can put stuff on here, and like you say, it's just sort of anything that took our interest, like random gameplay, or whatever it was, you know.
Yeah, I think I would have been 12, 13 at the time. So yeah, very much. Yeah, not my best quality videos, should we say? But no, I always used to make videos just as a child, really, nothing for YouTube, just for fun. I used to just make little videos with my friends and things. I've always enjoyed, you know, creating sort of videos, even if no one was going to see them. I still like to make it. So I think that's pretty where it initially spawned from, and then obviously YouTube became that kind of platform to actually do a bit more of it, really.
No, that's ace. I mean, hey, we all start somewhere, right? I mean, my old Samsung Galaxy, very shaky hand quality filming my Doctor Who bookcase. No one can probably watch it. It's probably too blurry. But yeah, we all humble beginnings, man. Humble beginnings.
Exactly that. Yeah.
So what was the turning point? Like you say, that period, that was just you were uploading sort of, I guess, like when you felt like it, random bits and pieces. Like, was there a turning point in the time you've been uploading where you were like, okay, I want to try and do this more like consistently, not necessarily as as when you're a kid, you don't think, oh, this is a job, so to speak. But do you know what I mean? Like, was there a time when you thought, I want to try and get a video out like once a week or something like that?
Yeah, exactly. I think, well, through Series 9, when that was airing back in, that was 2015, that's around the time I was getting very big into doing Unreleased Doctor Who music, because I know that had quite a big sort of following back when Murray Gold was doing it. There was still quite a lot of interest, particularly when the soundtracks used to take, years to be released. Obviously, we're still waiting for Series 10.
Yeah, where is it? Where is it?
Exactly. So it used to be quite popular. Well, I think it still is to an extent, but maybe a little bit less so. And so I think that was a great sort of starting point to kind of build some sort of content, even if it wasn't, direct, speaking on YouTube content. And it was an opportunity to kind of do things on a regular basis off the back of the episodes that were airing of Series 9. And then I think just kind of coming off that, I kind of just really felt like I had a lot of opinions about Doctor Who. I might go on, the forums or on Twitter or whatever and share some opinions, but actually I really enjoyed making videos anyway. So why didn't I just combine that with my interest in Doctor Who and wanting to talk about it? And then let's just start making videos about it. I think, pretty much my first video, which I think I did private since then because I was too embarrassed by it, was a Series 9 review I did. I hope that's privated because I'm really not very confident at all, shall we say. It's not something I've ever really wanted to look back at. But some of those early ones, I think I then went through and reviewed Series 9, 6 months after it aired. But I thought that was just a good kind of place to start doing some videos, get something regular that was every week and things like that.
Yeah.
And then it kind of spawned from there. Class happened that year as well. So that was another thing to be able to talk about and tie in. I know, yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I think I maybe looked at it more favorably at the time than I do now is probably the best way I can describe it. Like if you watch my videos from the time, I'd say, they're actually all right. There's some good stuff here. But I look back at it now and I'm like...
Class was a weird one, wasn't it? Like I remember watching it at the time, and I thought this has there were moments where I was like, this is really good and like has a lot of potential, and then there were the moments where I was like, are we trying to be a bit too edgy here? Because it was like in Torchwood style, we're the teen show. We've got to have lots of swearing and lots of gore and sex references and all. And like I know it's a high school, and Yeah, it was just I found it very hit or miss. Like it was either really good or it was a bit like, Yeah, exactly.
And I think it was, it's one of those shows, as you say, like the first series of Torchwood, where it doesn't really know quite what it is almost yet. Like it's trying to distance itself from Doctor Who, but then it kind of just does it too almost overtly with gratuitous violence. What's this Ram getting his leg chopped off in the first episode? And there's just these bizarre gratuitous violence, just people getting killed just suddenly for no apparent reason. And I just remember kind of looking back at it. You have obviously, Capaldi turns up in the first episode.
Trying to distance yourself from Doctor Who. Has Doctor Who in the first episode.
Indeed. And then, but you just feel like kind of the 10 minutes we get of him is almost one of the best things about Class. And he leaves at the end and you're almost like, I kind of just want another series of Capaldi. I don't really want that as much. I don't want to see all these other characters, especially when that was a year we didn't have Doctor Who in as well. So yeah. I can understand why it didn't get a second season. I don't think, as much as, there's that frustrating cliffhanger that it ends on.
Well, I was going to ask, with that cliffhanger, would you as a viewer, did you want a second season?
I think I wanted to see how that story was resolved.
Yeah.
But I didn't necessarily desire a second season from the rest of it, apart from finding out what happened there. Let's just tie that into a Doctor Who episode or something, I don't know, and figure it out that way.
I think a lot of people, haven't they? They've said either openly or they probably think it like if Series 1 hadn't ended with that cliffhanger, if it had like been a neat ending, people probably would. I think a lot of people were like, we'll park that. That was nice. We'll move on now. But
yeah. And I just think that they kind of missed an opportunity to really boost the show by maybe having an episode in Series 9 just before it aired that was set in Coal Hill School and we meet these characters. I feel like that would have been a better way to really set the show off from a really tenuous... It's set in a school which isn't the same building as you saw in Doctor Who. It doesn't have any main characters we've ever met before, unlike the other spin-offs which worked because it was Captain Jack and Sarah Jane. I think just the lack of that real, link to Doctor Who and something that you're really going to connect with, I think made it much harder for that show to succeed.
Yeah, I think they tried to. I haven't listened to them, but I think they tried to rectify that somewhat in the few audios that they did. Because I think, if I remember, Ace pops up in one, I think, and
so I must confess I haven't listened to any of the Big Finish class adventures.
Yeah.
So I can't give too much opinion, but I'm pretty sure they do bring Ace in. I think they try to introduce a few more, familiar figures into class to try and make it a bit more accessible, I guess, and linked to Doctor Who.
Oh well, I know it has its fans, and that's great. But I just think it was one of those where, like we're saying, just a bit jumbled, like proportions, not really sure what it wanted to be or what it wanted to do. That. But hey, it's there. We've got it. And the DVD box annoyingly says Series 1 on the bottom, and I'm just like, oh, but there's no Series 2.
Yes, just put class on it and that'll do. We don't need anything else apart from that. That's fine.
But I guess that shows how confident, they were so confident that there was going to be another one. They were like, slap it on the box.
Yeah. I mean, they were so confident they had that fan show on YouTube. What was it? Was it like Classmates or something, wasn't it?
I didn't even know. No, what was that?
They had the Doctor Who, the fan show.
Yeah.
And then I think there was almost like a spin-off of that called Classmates or something along those lines.
No way.
Which was almost trying to create a fan base that wasn't already there for the show in terms of bringing fans on to talk about the episodes and things when it was quite hard to be a fan if you've only seen the first episode of this supposedly new show. I just remember it getting I remember it getting a lot of criticism at the time. I think it was called Classmates. I'll have to go and look it up again.
But you're going to give me some digging to do after this, because I do not. I have no memory of that whatsoever. But that sounds like something the BBC YouTube team would do. So.
Yes. Indeed.
And as you've already mentioned, you've done a lot of the unreleased music stuff. Like you say, that's when scrolling through it, I was like, wow, there's this much unreleased music across, Doctor Who, Torchwood, everything. So I'm not asking you to reveal your secrets, of course, but I imagine, being as it's unreleased, is it a bit of a laborious process to, I guess, because a lot of those tracks I find, or the ones that I've seen, are often in the episode played when there's dialogue happening or there's other sound effects happening. So do you have a specific process to, I guess, siphoning just the music, and is it quite straightforward, or is it a bit of a hassle?
Yeah, so without going into a 20-minute long explanation, essentially it's down to the way that the audio is mixed for the episodes. So all the episodes, when they're broadcast on TV or released on the DVDs and Blu-rays, are released in 5.1 surround sound audio. And so that means that the dialogue's in one channel of the audio, then sound effects in another, and often the music's spread out into separate ones. And so you can put it into you can get some plugins for Audacity actually, and you drop it into Audacity, and then it splits out all the audio tracks for you. And then that's how you get clean dialogue that you hear in some of these montage videos and things like that. Sometimes you hear dialogue that usually has music over it, and you're like, how do they get rid of that? It's because there's an audio track that only has dialogue in it. Then there's other tracks on there that are mostly music with a few special effects kind of dropped on top of it sometimes, and some echoey dialogue sometimes as well. So that's kind of the basic starting point of it. When you kind of pull it apart, you can find those tracks, and then it means that you kind of lose at least most of the dialogue, if nothing else, and then it also usually tidies up some of the special effects. And then from there, I often put it into Audition and start, trying to manually, remove bits and bobs here. That's the laborious part of it. But that's also why you'll often find quite a lot of mixed results in some of unreleased music. I remember, I think it's Series 6 in particular is really bad for that. Just the way the audio is mixed that season. When you rip it off the DVDs or the Blu-rays, it means that a lot of the dialogue is still echoey on the music tracks, which is rather a shame. So that series in particular is a lot harder to get any clean music that wasn't on the soundtrack. Whereas I think the first couple of series in particular, they're a lot better. Series 1 and 2, there's a huge amount there that you can quite easily get out, because obviously they released hardly any of the music from that. It was a 90-minute soundtrack to cover 2 whole seasons. And so the chance to be able to pull out music from that actually is pretty clean, even if it's only the sort of samples that Murray God used to work with back then. There's still some very nostalgic pieces of music, I think, that were never actually released, but you just remember them because they're part of Rose or part of Doomsday or stories like that. I think that sort of makes it that much more nostalgic. So that's kind of where it came from. I kind of just gradually figured out kind of how to do it. I can't remember. I think I found a tutorial on YouTube somewhere or something to start with. And then that kind of opened that door, because I was fascinated by all this music and wanting to find so many bits of music that were great but weren't on the soundtracks themselves.
That's mental as well that you said. I completely forgot that series 1 and 2 don't have individual releases. As you say, it's just that one album with David Tennant on the front cover. That's mad.
Indeed.
Yeah, crazy. And Murray Gold's compositions, like you say, is so good across the 12 years that he did it. And I think the first one I saw of yours, which was I think it wasn't long after it aired. I think, if I remember right, it was a particular part of Lie of the Land from series 10.
Yes.
I think it's when, if memory serves, when they're in like I think it's when Bill's remembering her mother, and that then spreads out.
Yeah.
Isn't it? I think it's a version of the of 12's theme that's like slightly in like a higher pitch or a higher key.
Yes.
And I remember hearing that and thinking, "Whoa, like that sounds ace!" But of course, you can barely hear it because everyone's talking. Yeah. And
exactly.
When I typed it in, I think that's when your video popped up. So I think it's just a great idea because, as you say, there's a lot of people and a lot of, because obviously looking through your videos, they do quite well with the fans. I guess, because
they are quite the popular videos indeed.
Yeah, but I think it's because not just fans, people love music from TV shows, and the fact that, as you say, we get series releases, but it often feels like, to me at least, like just the highlights. They go, well, I guess it's partly because if they included everything, they'd have to put it on like 10 CDs or something. But
indeed.
Yeah. So out of the ones that have been released, then the official series soundtracks. In your opinion, I know I'm asking off the top of your head, but in your opinion, is there like one that you'd say like that's the best series release, and then one that's the worst, like the two sides of it, I suppose?
That is a really challenging question, actually. I think that with the earlier Murray Gold series, so in the RTD era, essentially, the releases were a lot smaller. So obviously we only had one release of Series 1 and 2. Series 3 and Series 4 only had a sort of single disc release. Whereas from Series 5 onwards, there was like 2.5 hours of music for every single one released, which, meant that there was more of the music covered maybe than that was originally on there. I think that probably Series 4 is one of the best in terms of actual music. I think so much of the music is cracking in that series. All the Dalek stuff in the finale, all the stuff in Silence of the Library with River's theme for the first time brought in.
Oh, and there's
Donna's
theme
is obviously fantastic.
Song of Sadness or whatever it's called.
Exactly, which is so it's kind of slightly unnerving and creepy and melancholic. It's such a brilliant piece of music there, and there's just, I think that's got a lot of great kind of action pieces of music in that release in particular. I think the specials also has a lot of great music. Waters of Mars, unfortunately, there's only about 6 or 7 minutes that's released, but as a whole soundtrack, it's amazing. And it's definitely, I'm not sure if I did it or somebody else has done it, but at some point there is a full soundtrack of Waters of Mars on YouTube, which is just brilliant. There's so many great versions of, like the Bad Wolf theme that was brought back for the Time of Victorious and all of that sort of thing brought in there, that it's brilliant. And then The End of Time is probably one of the best. That's got about an hour of music across the 2 hours, and obviously 4 knocks when he realizes his moment, and pieces of music like that. There's just exactly that it's full of it. It's absolutely full of it. It's brilliant. So probably Series 4 and kind of the specials are probably some of the best stuff earlier on. Then later on, I'm also a big fan of series. Well, I like Series 9 as a series, but in particular the music I think is very strong. Obviously Heaven Sent's clearly the highlight there. And the benefit of that is with the soundtrack. I think it's a 55-minute episode. I think there's 48 minutes of music on the soundtrack. Basically everything that was in the episode is on a single disc of the soundtrack, which is just fantastic, because I think it's probably the best individual episode score that Murray's ever done, in my opinion at least. I think it's just because it needed a story like that when it's only got Capaldi walking around a castle for 55 minutes. You need the music to carry it along with the direction and the writing. So that's why I think it works so effectively. And just across that season, I think there is a lot of great music in there. The Dalek two-parter at the start's full of it as well. And then Ashilda's theme as well is in there, as much as, not as great a character, but the theme is really, really good.
And like the Under the Lake Before the Flood with like the little bit of like dance influence, or it's like the beats sound very like
exactly. Exactly. When they're trying to plan how to sort of capture a ghost, the music in that's on there, and it's really, really fantastic. So I think that's probably some of the best stuff as well. I think looking on the other side of it, and the stuff I don't think is quite as great, I think that Series 6 is probably the one I feel like has the most kind of unremarkable music, if that's not a bad way to put it. Kind of just there's a lot of maybe what I'd call kind of filler tracks on this actual soundtrack release. As much as there's some great stuff in like the opening two parts, you've got kind of the American style versions of I Am the Doctor and things like that, the sort of theme for the silence, and those bits are really, really good, and also Wedding River Song. But just some of those episodes midway through, Curse of the Black Spot, Night Terrors, the God Complex is all right, but there's just a few in there where the music just feels a bit kind of average. Like there's not really any I'm ever going to kind of specifically put on a playlist or go back and listen to. It just kind of plays through a bit. So I think that's an example of almost a release where it didn't need to be as long as it was, maybe because some of the music in there isn't as exciting. But I'm sure they have their fans, so I don't want to deny it, because I make unreleased music because I'm often want there to be more than there actually is.
No, of course.
So yeah, I think if I pick any, it'd probably be Series 6 is the weakest, but by no means are any of them really bad. And obviously it's great that loads of the Christmas specials have got, their own releases as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
A Christmas Carol's fantastic. I think the Snowmen, Time of the Doctor, they're also really, really good. So yeah, there is so much good stuff there that it's, I think we've got a great amount of it, but there's always, more I'd love to hear, but we probably never will.
And are we ever getting Series 10?
Well, that's the question. I mean, I did about a year, well, actually nearly 2 years ago now. Well, it's such a long time ago. I spoke to Jake because I do music tech at university, and Jake Jackson, who was the recording engineer for Doctor Who from Series 3 to Series 10, he came in to do a talk with us, and I actually asked him directly about the Series 10 soundtrack.
When is it coming out?
Well, yeah, I was just like, I'm a Doctor Who fan, and also, by the way, did you know that the last series hasn't been released yet? I just in case you didn't know, like the last series is still not there. And he was like, oh, has it not been? Oh, well, he was like, oh, I'm seeing Murray in a couple of weeks, so I'll have to mention it to him. So unfortunately, this was nearly 2 years ago, so presumably that didn't go anywhere. But I did. Yeah. I've on behalf of the fandom, I made the effort. I
tried.
To Jake himself, I tried as much as I could. Exactly. Yeah. Short of asking Murray directly, that was about the closest I was going to get. So. Yeah. I'm inclined to say still yes, because I think Murray put out a tweet last year with some sort of cryptic thing saying, oh yeah, good things come to those who wait or something. He's always a bit vague and cryptic now with Doctor Who stuff. So I feel like it might randomly turn up at some point in the future, but also I kind of, with every passing year, you hold out less hope, given it was 4 years ago now.
You just sort of hold you. But then how long? There was quite a gap, wasn't there, between the Series 9 series going out and the sound? Was that 3 or 4 years?
Yeah, so that obviously the series was September 2015 onwards. I think the release was April 2018, something like that. So it was about 2.5 years in the end. So that would have put us to... what's that, start of last year, but then obviously COVID happened, so that was always going to delay things anyway. So you never know, maybe it's in the pipeline and it just got delayed. I don't know. I really want it. Like, there's so much great stuff out there, like obviously the finale in particular is absolutely full of brilliant music. I want so much of that soundtrack I want to listen to. Unfortunately we can't. I mean, that was probably when when I did the soundtracks, that's probably when they were at their sort of peak in terms of interest, because I did the final episodes of Series 10 at the time when they were released, and I think the Dr. Falls has got like 50,000-60,000 views now, because there's so much good stuff on there. Exactly that people want to listen to. So yeah, that hopefully would be the answer, but I don't want to give I'm less optimistic with every passing year.
Sure. And do you dabble at all in the classic series sound? Because I know they've done a few of those over the years. Do you dabble in any of that?
Yeah. So I mean, I am kind of listening to and aware of a lot of it. I think most recently they released the Sunmakers, I remember last year, because the problem is, particularly with 70s music, is so much of what Dudley did doesn't exist anymore. And it's really, really sad that there's so few that can actually be released, because, there's so much great music in there. Stories like Mind of Evil, I remember, it's got a load of great music. Ambassadors of Death is one of my favorite soundtracks, actually. Kind of underrated classic from the 70s that I just think is brilliant. But that's the challenge with, I think, that part of the show. But obviously we're getting lots of the 80s soundtracks. I think we had Cave of Androzani a few years ago, Five Doctors. I can't remember what else. I think Ghostlight the soundtrack's done as well.
I think there's been quite a few. Survival as well, which is a great soundtrack by that was Dominic Glynn, I think, and that's just that's one of my favorite Who soundtracks, and one I re-listened to recently. I recently rewatched The Two Doctors, which I love anyway. Like, I don't I know a lot of people don't like it, but I've always loved it.
I don't think it's that bad. I don't think it's that bad, really. I think it's good fun. Colin and Patrick. How are you going to complain about that?
Can't complain about that, but the music in that is really good. Like, I love I don't know, again, people, I'm not musically inclined, so I'm not even going to attempt the instrument, but when they're in Spain, like, the like slow music they have in Spain, like when you've got the Doña Rana or when Oscar gets killed, that little refrain they do is really nice. And it's just a great soundtrack. So yeah, I'm all for like more classic releases, but Series 10 first. I think people have been
I think that's top of the list. Is definitely
top of the list, because they've done Series 11, haven't they, and 12.
Yes, I mean, I think that's purely to do with the fact we've got a different composer, because it's still being released by the same label. Obviously, Silver Screen Records are still doing it, but I think just maybe the way that Segun Akinola works just means that he, I maybe sees the benefit of doing it quicker, or it just works as part of the production flow to do it quicker. I would say that I think that his soundtracks are probably a lot more quickly done. I get the impression, just the way some of the music was kind of cut up, particularly in series 11, felt like he just pulled an 8-minute bit of music out of an episode and dumped it as a track on the soundtrack, rather than where Murray used to really split up individual cues, often re-record a lot of it. I don't think that's done as much with Sagan, which is probably why it comes out quicker.
Fair.
And I'm not going to complain, because particularly I thought series 12 was a real, there's some really strong music in there, as much as overall it's probably more ambient than it used to be with Murray. I think in particular, look at Timeless Children and the new Time Lord theme and all the stuff around that, I thought was absolutely fantastic. It really brought home, the significance of these events. It really gave a real royal feeling to the Time Lords, and with coming up with a new theme for them that really worked, I thought was brilliant. So there's a lot of good stuff in there, and I think it's great that we can listen to it straight away, but then also leave series 10 as that glaring gap.
Well, I hope that gap in your CD collection gets filled soon, just like I'm hoping to fill my gap in my steelbook collection, because I didn't get series 9 first time around, and now I've got a glaring gap just there. So I'm hoping they re-release it, but I mean, who knows at this point? But
I have to say, I do have an original series 9 steelbook. I do have all of the steelbook series 1 to 12. I'm very lucky that I just happened to buy it at the time, not knowing that it would obviously become really rare and difficult to get hold of.
It's so crazy, isn't it? Every time I look, I think the minimum is like 250, and I'm
Genuinely.
Like, why? Like who's? But then the crazy thing is, like, when you go on eBay and you see that listing, your eyes see the number and you think, oh, surely no one's. And then it'll be like, 11 bids, and I'm like, what are people doing? Like, I'd rather wait and hope the BBC, even if they just say, guys, look, we're not doing a re-release. At least then I know. Do you know what I mean? At least then I know we're not going to get that re-release.
And Megan has just handed me the actual thing. I have got the steelbook here.
There it is.
Yeah, it's very lovely. Clara on the back, Peter on the front. I don't know what we've got inside it. Because it's me, I keep the series 9 facts. I keep the little, Doctor Magazine sheet and whatever.
Yeah,
it's my favorite series of Doctor Who. So I have to have the proper steelbook of it. So I'm very lucky to have that. And as much as that's worth, I'm never going to sell it. So
never sell
I'm sorry.
No,
sorry if you're interested, but I'm not getting rid of that.
To make you an offer, like. No, if anyone's listening just like on audio, jump to YouTube right now, because that was a thing of beauty. That was.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, we'll definitely talk more about like the Blu-rays and all that side of it in just a moment. And I'm saying to myself, you just saw Series 9 Steelbook, just move on.
I'm sorry.
No. It's hey, as you say, hold on to that thing, man. Honestly, like keep hold of that. But one of the, just to stick with your channel for a second, one of the, like you said, the series that's popped off the most, and one I've enjoyed the most when I've been watching your content, is, like you say, the Megan React series. And so watching Doctor Who with a partner, it's an interesting territory, because I'm sure there are some out there who some partners are like, no way, not doing it, not bothered, whatever. Some are like, I'll give it a try. And then there's the stress of like, oh God, are they going to like it? And then some who are just like, yeah, I love Doctor Who, let's go. So what scenario was that for you? And just how did it come about? What made you guys want to do it?
Yeah, I mean, so obviously, Megan knew pretty quickly that I was a big Doctor Who fan, and at some point I was probably going to try and make her watch it. So I remember we just did one night. Obviously the first actual reaction that's on YouTube is for Parting of the Ways. So we watched 12 episodes before we decided to go onto YouTube and do it. Which I guess gave the opportunity to work out whether Megan actually enjoyed it enough to want to go on the internet and talk about it. I think we did our first video after like Dalek, I think, when it was like I did a I made my girlfriend watch Doctor Who, slightly clickbaity title, I know.
Hey, we got to do it. We got to do it.
Exactly. And that was kind of Megan's first chance to appear on the channel and talk about Doctor Who at all. And I think, off the back of that, I feel like we asked whether people would be interested in it. And then I obviously knew what happened in Parting of the Ways as to whether, it's worth reacting to as an episode. And I don't know, I can't quite remember exactly how it all came about, but we just kind of, thought, why not? Obviously, it was my thing, was doing, Doctor Who YouTube. And I think Megan probably wanted to kind of, I guess, support it, would you say? She's nodding. And kind of get involved with it. And so we kind of did Parting of the Ways, and obviously that was, a really big hit. It was one of my, most popular videos at the time, kind of straight off the bat. It got a lot of views and people loved it. As much as I look back at it, we both look back at it now and we just cringe. It's so embarrassing. It's
the manner of old videos on YouTube, isn't it?
It's just like we're so awkward. We're sat like so far apart from each other, and it's just really awkward. But over time, it got more relaxed and we got there. And I think through the RTD era, we kind of did selected episodes because we weren't quite ready to do the whole of it. And I know people were kind of a little bit, not always loving the fact that we were skipping episodes, because then it's which episodes do you do, which episodes do you skip? Everybody loves one episode, every episode is a favorite to somebody. And so that's a really tricky balance to strike. And so I think it was Waters and Mars onwards, we've done every episode since then. But up to that point, I think we only did about 6 or 7 episodes of series 2 and 3, and then most of series 4, but not all of it. So it kind of just started from watching a few first. Megan immediately enjoyed it, which is probably the key point. We watched it from Rose onwards, and that I thought it's his best place than any to start. I know people always say, "Oh, start with Blink," but I'm like, as great as Blink is, it's not got the Doctor in for most of the episode. I know it's a fun kind of, sci-fi story that's kind of Doctor Who-y, but actually to get a feel for what kind of almost standard Doctor Who is, Rose is a much better, I think, starting point than Blink personally. So, we started there, and then I think Megan was just like, yeah, sure, let's watch the next one. And it kind of went from there, really. And then...
You can do your sigh of relief when they go, oh, let's watch the next one. You go, oh, thank God.
Indeed, yes. I'm not going to have to try and hold this back for, have to kind of watch it in secret or whatever. Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
And have you both delved into Classic Who together, or is that to come?
That's to come, yeah, because we haven't quite finished series 10 yet. We're kind of halfway through that. We've recorded 3 or 4 of them, but we've still got the rest to finish recording, because Megan did watch series 11 and series 12 kind of as they aired with me.
Sure,
just because, I didn't want to kind of shut her out from the current series. That would not
only
be very
I
nice
could watch it live.
And obviously, particularly with series 11, it was benefited that there wasn't really anything in those episodes that was going to spoil any previous episodes, which is great. And so it made it much easier to watch that and then also continue watching the past ones as well. We've got a few episodes of series 10 left, and then once we've done that, we'll kind of be up to date essentially. And then I think we'll start delving into Classic Who a little bit.
Yeah,
Megan, we're never going to react to everything. That's just not realistic. We're not going to go through
first, folks. You heard it here first.
600 episodes, all those missing episodes. We're not going to sit and watch reconstructions. That's so most
that'll
likely
be more selections, I guess, won't it?
Yeah, most likely it'll be like a story or 2 per Doctor, kind of give a flavour of the different eras of the classic series and just what there is to enjoy about it. Which is kind of give an overview really, and then Megan can kind of understand what each different Doctor is like, which would be really good.
I feel Classic Who's a different beast in a way with how you approach it, because like you say, Rose is obviously a great jumping on point for the new series, and it being the first episode, it then I guess allows you to springboard into going chronologically, whereas with Classic Who, you could start at An Earthly Child, but because it's the oldest and obviously TV production has changed so much, I know a lot of people who've tried that with friends, partners, and obviously, bar the first episode, they've kind of been put off by it, because obviously a lot of those really early 60s ones in places you could argue are a bit slow in places. Whereas if you started with, I don't know, like an 80s story, or one I always used was Tomb of the Cybermen, which I know is the 60s, but that's a very nice, fast-paced 4-part adventure. So would you have one in mind that you'd want to start Megan on, or?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we'd probably go chronological in Doctor, so we probably would pick out a first Doctor story.
Sure.
And I also probably wouldn't want to put her through a 6-parter first off, so I'd probably try and find a 4-parter because it's not quite so long.
We're going to watch the Daleks Masterclass.
let's do 9 episodes of reconstructions and 3 other episodes. That sounds like a great 5-hour adventure to start your Classic Who. Yeah, maybe not. Maybe we won't do that. I still need to think about it. I'll probably do a poll at some point and get some people's opinions on, what's a good 4-part first Doctor story that exists that I could
that is still around.
That actually, given how long some of the stories were back then, is actually quite difficult to do. So I don't know. We watched the pilot. I actually kind of messed that up. I was meant to watch the first episode of An Earthly Child, but when you put the DVD in, if you click play all, it plays the pilot version first.
It does, which is a really weird,
and I didn't realize
feature. Yeah,
and so we did it, and we reacted to it, and then I put it on YouTube. I think just before I put it on YouTube, I realized, oh wait, this is actually the pilot. This isn't the actual An Earthly Child Part 1. So that was a bit of a mess up. So that's our only kind of Classic Who reaction so far. So we'll probably start with a 4-parter from the first Doctor and work our way through. I mean, I think, the third Doctor, for example, is probably a bit easier. Do Spearhead from Space or something like that. It's probably quite easy.
Course, yeah.
Then, I don't know, do maybe Robots of Death or something for
like
Tom
the
Baker.
Ark in Space or something like that.
Exactly. Then, I don't know, possibly Earthshock, or maybe just do the 5 Doctors for the 5th Doctor. Maybe do both, probably both. That and probably Tomb of the Cybermen will probably be a second Doctor one. I think that's it's
you're right with the first Doctor though. In terms of 4-parters, I'm only obviously there's An Earthly Child, but then there's only like the Aztecs and the Romans and
the Time Meddler.
Oh, that might
Yeah, that's a more of an option. Yeah, indeed. But yeah, because obviously that introduces the meddling monk, so there's not too much continuity there.
I would have said the War Machines, but I do love the War Machines, but it feels more like a second Doctor story than it does a Hartnell one.
Exactly, because it's almost very close to the sort of start of the second Doctor, and that production team's kind of coming in, aren't they? So it feels just that more ilk set on Earth, and
exactly,
and that sort of style, definitely,
Well, whichever one you two do start with, I wish you good fortune on your Classic Who journey.
Thank you. Yes, it's going to be an experience, certainly.
Absolutely. Well, the last part of your channel I wanted to delve into before we get into some other stuff is your recently launched podcast, Kavam.
Yes, indeed. Yes.
So tell us a bit about Kavam.
Yeah, it's really exciting. It's something that I've always wanted to do a Doctor Who podcast. Essentially, like for the last 2, 3, 4 years, I've been trying to come up with ideas to do a Doctor Who podcast. But I didn't want to just become another one who just, reviews current episodes. Get three blokes on and let's talk about Caves of Androzani. Like that's been done. There's another 100 podcasts out there that can do that.
Sure.
And so I wanted to combine that with the fact that one of the things that I'm most interested in and enjoy about Doctor Who is actually all the special features that we get on the Blu-rays around the episodes. I almost find sometimes watching a really good making of documentary can be almost as interesting as a story itself sometimes, and some of the features they do there. So I felt that there must be some other people out there with that kind of, an interest in what else is there to sort of alongside, particularly the classic series. Yeah. And so I just sort of thought that's something that nobody else has done. So why not? Let's give it a go and see if there's an audience for it, really. And so far, I think it's proved there is. There's, I've been getting a good couple of hundred views on each one, which is, more than I expected to get for something quite as niche as that.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's great fun just to be able to kind of delve in, particularly with the collection range in full swing at the moment. It's such a great thing to explore each time, because there's so many great documentaries on those, whether they're new or whether they're from the past, that so much creativity often has gone into, and yet that can so often get overlooked because it's just a documentary about a story rather than the story itself. So that's kind of where it all kind of came from. And I think we've done 6 or 7 episodes now, and it's just been really good fun to talk about those releases and things like that.
Absolutely. And it's a great, you can check it out on Elliot's YouTube channel, Kavam. Is it on like Spotify as well?
Yeah,
is it just YouTube?
If you just, so it goes on YouTube, but it's also certainly Spotify and Apple Podcasts are the best places there. Just type in Kavam to Spotify or Apple Podcasts and you'll find it there. And if not, just go on YouTube. So it's fairly easily accessible. I think now I've managed to sort that all out.
Oh, fantastic. And for anyone who doesn't know, and I hope I get this right, VAM, I believe, is it value added material?
Yes, sorry, I should explain the name. Yes. So VAM is kind of the industry name for special features on a DVD or a Blu-ray. Value-added material, as you say. It's sort of stuff other than the episodes of anything that makes it worth kind of a bit more money to put it on a release, and that's why we used to get these like volume 1, 2, 3, and 4 of the old series of Doctor Who with no special features, and they'd be, I think they were termed vanilla releases, which just means there's nothing on them in terms of VAM. And so I thought VAM, combine it with Kablam as a story, which was about sort of space Amazon. It's kind of linked.
It all kind of comes with it together.
I was kind of a catchy title sort of. So Kavam was what we ended up with. It's okay. It's a bit cheesy, but I think it works. I think
I like it. I think it's a great.
It's unique, so I thought that would work quite nicely. So that's kind of where it all comes from.
And Doctor Who's, I guess, always been a big champion of VAM in the DVD arena, I suppose, because I think for people who are old enough to remember, like myself, when DVDs, I guess, like first boomed, like in the late 90s, early, but I think it really took off in the early 2000s. Like you look at DVDs released then. There are so many special features on like every movie, every TV show that came out. Like they had bonus discs that just had VAM on them. And Doctor Who DVDs, even from maybe not the very beginning, but like fairly early on, always like included that. But then I think towards, as like downloads became a thing and like streaming and Netflix, I'd say around, 2000, maybe say 2010 onwards, the industry seems like it moved away from VAM for DVDs and then reserved it for Blu-ray, or in some cases just forwent it altogether. But Doctor Who seemed to stay, at least in the classic series, it seemed to stay the course on VAM. And as you say, I think that's why a lot of people delve into the like classic series physically rather than digitally because of the VAM that's on there, and now with the collection sets as well. Would you say it's a shame that in like terms of physical media, I know they are still there, but do you think it's a shame that in the last 5-10 years on the whole the presence of VAM on physical releases has diminished quite a lot?
I think it's a shame, because I think that obviously Doctor Who is a bit of a special case, and there is a big fandom for people talking about Classic Who on documentaries and whatever. But yeah, obviously, if you get a release of any current drama series, there's very, very little in the way of special features about it. If you look at something like Line of Duty, there's barely anything. That's got a release this year, but there's not a lot on there. And I don't know if it's just maybe the budget isn't there anymore, because I still have, and it's one of the reasons I've always had a fascination, is the fascination of how TV is made. That's sort of kind of the basis of why I've always been so interested in this stuff, is finding out how television was made, particularly with Doctor Who, learning about how it used to be made back 50 years ago and how interesting that process has changed over time. And that's the same with, Doctor Who Confidential was so fascinating for that reason. So I don't know if they just see it as less interesting, the filming process of TV nowadays, or whether it's too samey or what, because that was probably a lot of the driver of it back in the day. And I guess also, I think, as you say, streaming has become a bigger thing. And so physical releases for a lot of things are very much an afterthought. And so there's not really probably any just the budget there for it, because people will just go and stream something on Netflix when it turns up, or on iPlayer or whatever. They won't go and buy a DVD of it so much. And so it's not going to make as much money, and therefore they're not going to put as much into it. And I think probably the basis of where it comes from.
Yeah. No, I'd agree with that viewing. And the age-old question, of course, is not just in terms of Doctor Who, more just the industry. Yes. Could you envision a time in our life in the future where physical media just isn't a thing anymore? Do you think we'll go completely digital, or do you think physical will always sort of survive on in a way?
I think that, things are going to gradually go more and more digital. I think that's inevitable. I think that there will always be some form of audience for physical media. You even look at it, and VHS, it's a very, very small niche audience, but there are still people collecting VHSs on, off eBay and whatever. And so I feel particularly, in where we're at now with, like, for example, the Blu-ray collection range, I feel like obviously that's going to end at some point. We're hopefully going to get them all, and that's going to end. But I feel like, fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
Really need to get them.
It needs to get.
I feel like that will probably be the last of Classic Who on any physical media. I don't think we'll ever get Classic Doctor Who on another physical media. As I know they probably said that with the DVDs, but I really can't envisage that, because as we say, it's just going to go more and more that way. I feel like DVDs themselves will probably burn out completely, because they are just, as much as they're kind of very cheap, and DVD players are very cheap and whatever, they are very much an inferior format in terms of releasing content on, the way
become the VHS of
the way content's compressed and all of it. It's really, quite pretty poor compared to what you get on Blu-ray nowadays. As much as it's great, it's cheap and, freely available, all the Classic Who DVDs, it's brilliant. But I think in terms of long term, if you're going to get a physical release, you're going to want it to be a high quality one, a one where, you're getting the content in the best possible quality, which is what we're getting with the Classic Who re-releases. They're really trying to, get the restoration as good as possible. Yeah. And so I feel like that's going to be the only real audience for somebody who wants a real kind of original, high quality kind of piece of media, because streaming services are the same. Again, they compress things so much, so you're never going to get the perfect original quality in the most part over something digital. So I think that's where there's still a small audience, somebody like myself, and I think they'll only get smaller over time, but I think there will always be something there.
Yeah. No, I agree with that view as well. Like the sort of flickering light of physical media will shine on. And I guess I hadn't thought about it, but I think you're right in terms of the whole Classic Who, last release being this Blu-ray collection, because I think as well, what I see a lot of people enjoy about the VAM on it particular is obviously the fact they are including people who worked on it at the time. And of course, none of us are getting any younger, not to be bleak about it, but,
exactly.
in 5-10 years, are we still going to have doctors, companions that you can record new things with? There might be, there might not. So yeah, I think in terms of that, if they were re-releasing it again, I don't think there'd be any great new VAM on it. But then they probably couldn't upscale the picture quality anymore. They were pushing it with the Blu-ray, but
exactly. I don't see any format that could ever, it was filmed in the most part on standard definition videotape, and you're never going to take it that much further. There are film trims which exist, and it's great when they're in HD, like season 19 in particular has got a lot of that, but that can't be upscaled any further than it has been on Blu-ray. So I don't think from a quality point of view you're ever going to get, unless there was, millions of pound budgets to do something, which there never will be. No, then I don't think there's anywhere further we can get. And as you say, there's that same problem of a lack of contributors. Unfortunately, it's a race against time in the nicest possible way. Going forwards and I think that's why, at least there's rumors that they interview people 2 or 3 years in advance they are getting on a little bit and things like that, just to make sure that is in the can for a future release and things. I think that's a smart way to go about it, because sadly we just don't know when all of these great actors, actresses, production team, whoever, they're not going to be around anymore to be able to tell those stories.
That's it, yeah. Well, hopefully, like you say, the collection series will be completed, because
Indeed,
if it isn't, there'll be a lot of angry nerds out there who are going to complain about it.
Or even if they just change the logo with the new production team.
Oh, that's the worry now, isn't it?
That is my concern. I mean, I think they assured us they wouldn't, but still.
Yeah. Was it rumors, or did someone say that at an event? Like I think someone asked that. They were like, "Oh, are you going to keep the?" And I can't remember what they said. Didn't they sort of? They didn't confirm it, but like you say, weren't they like, well, we'll try and keep it the same, but...
Yeah, I think it was someone like Russell Minton or somebody like that, who's kind of the exec producer on the Blu-ray range. I think he said something along the lines of, we've got almost like we've got an agreement about it. Maybe it's not like a legal agreement, but there is an agreement that logo is not going to be
handshake
changed.
About it.
Exactly, because they understand that the sort of people they're marketing this to, it will annoy, because yes, it is a pretty niche release, and those people want the logo to be the same. It's bad enough we've had the age rating logos have changed on the most recent releases.
The BBFC logos.
Yes, the BBFCs of the updated, but there's nothing they can do about that, because that's obviously dictated to them. But hopefully that'll stay the same. But obviously, as you say, more importantly, hopefully we'll actually get them all eventually.
Yeah. I've warmed to those new BBFs. Do you know, when they first came out, I think, like all change, I was like, what is this? Yeah. But I quite like them now, to be honest. I don't mind them. I think they
do look quite slick, indeed. It's just, when you put them next to other ones, it's a bit annoying. But it's a very, very niche, nerdy problem. So I shouldn't, complain about it too much.
Yeah. You can always print stickers off. And
well, exactly. Exactly.
I'm sure some of you out there have. Come on now.
Well, I know people have actually just quickly, I know people have done that with the steelbooks, because the first few steelbooks, obviously series 1 to 3 have the kind of classic series logo on it. There are metal things you can get to stick on the front of them with the 2018 logo on them to update it if you want to. So I think it's on Etsy or something. It does exist. So, yeah, it's worth looking up if you're interested.
I definitely will. I'm glad you mentioned the steelbooks, because I was just going to segue onto those for a brief second, because for all the great VAM we talked about on the the Blu-ray collection, with the steelbooks, I found, and please do correct me if I'm wrong, because I think you might know more about this than I do. From the steelbook releases, series 1 to, I don't have 9, but I'm nine came out at the time. So let's say series 1 to 8. All the VAM on there seems to be stuff that was there from the original releases of the DVDs, Blu-rays, etc. There seems to be very minimal additions. I think the specials one had that new interview with David Tennant, I think. So I wonder, do you reckon there's a reason why, for the classic series there's all this extra stuff, and then for the re-releases of the modern series, I know the original releases had a lot, but for the re-releases, I guess, why aren't they getting the same additions, if you like, compared to classic Who?
Yeah, so I think that as you say, the steelbooks themselves, of all these for series 1 to 8, they are all simply repackaged versions of the previous releases. So for series 1 to 4, they are the upscaled Blu-ray HD ones that we got. I think it was in 2013 or something along those lines.
Yeah.
And then from series 5 onwards, they are the releases from 2011, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. With all the same special features, the same episode kind of quality, everything's the same. It very much is just in a new box, which I know looks a bit like a money grab, and to an extent it is by the BBC. Yes, I've also bought into it and bought them all.
We've all bought into it.
Yes, there is nothing updated with that, and I think that is simply down to it's a completely different team who are involved with those in terms of those releases compared to the team working on the collection range. They are very much a separate part of BBC World, I guess BBC Studios now, probably Worldwide Studios, one of those who are working on the collection range, and then there's another team who probably don't really have any budget who are working on the sort of steelbook range, and so it just means we don't get anything else on that, unfortunately. And I think what's in some ways been worse is the more recent series. So you look at series 11 and 12, there is barely anything on there, and those are like the first proper releases of it, and there's it's basically just clips that are on YouTube. They've just chucked on the special features, so that's a real shame.
Yeah,
I think that the only way that may well change in the future is when hopefully the collection team get to look at New Who, because essentially they're not at the moment. And the hope is, and they've kind of, people like Chris Chapman, I know who you've had on here before, he's said previously that he'd love to do it. If the chance arises, he'll do it in a heartbeat. They'll do New Who. It's just whether the BBC decide that, I guess, that it's going to make them enough money to be worth it. And I can't believe that it won't be. I know. but they still had to be sold quite hard to do even season 12 to start the collection range. And so that was why that was a limited range, and that's why there was a lot of problems with people getting it and all that, and why it was going for 400 quid on eBay at one point, which is shocking.
Those days, so...
indeed. But that's kind of where we're at with the new series Steelbooks, and unfortunately why they aren't improving in any way when they're being released. They are simply repackaged versions because they're done by a different part of the BBC.
I feel they tread that very fine line though, don't they? Because like you say, we've all bought into it mainly for like, the artwork, which is obviously gorgeous across all of them, but like you say, I guess when you break it down, aside from that, you think, oh, well, there's really not much different. And I guess to an ordinary customer who maybe isn't as bothered about the artwork, if you told them that, they'd then maybe be less incentivized to get it, because they'd be like, oh, well, I've already got it on Blu-ray or whatever, so why do I need to buy it again? So it's a very fine line. Well, as you say, I only hope the collection team eventually one day, fingers crossed, get around to it. I'm sure they will. I'm sure they will. And again, the BBC need convincing. Come on, you did.
Just ask us. We'll tell you that we'll buy it.
Yeah, especially with new as well. Like I'd like to think they'd take a lot less convincing, especially if the classic Who ones, as they have been doing, all sell out as well. So
exactly. And there's just so much potential with it. You look at like series 1, and we think about for example, the amount of production problems involved in series 1. You think about some in-depth making of documentaries about some of those stories, getting back, Keith Boak, a guy who whatever happened to him, who apparently just fell out with everybody on set. And if he's willing to come and do an interview, get Russell in. If Chris will do it, get him in and talk about what it was really like 25 years on. Like, we're at the point where it's a similar distance in time to what we had with say the end of Sylvester McCoy when they started doing the DVD range. It was only about 12 years, I think, between Remembrance of the Daleks on TV and the DVD kind of classic Who release. So we're kind of past that point, really. So I feel like there's just such good opportunity there to explore that part of the show and what it was really like making those episodes back then. So hopefully we'll get
one day. I think it's coming.
Exactly.
It's coming. And just as we move towards the end of the show, I always like to chat, especially when I chat with my guests about Doctor Who. I always like to discuss like how did you get into Doctor Who? Do you know what I mean? Like we all have different stories. So how did you get into this crazy little sci-fi show?
So I have a memory, which I'm pretty certain is true, and I've told it before, I think, on my channel, is that I remember walking into my parents' room during the airing of Rose, and my mum was sitting on the sort of side of her bed on a little tiny TV, like the size of like a small laptop. Watching Rose, and it was the scene where the Doctor and Rose have just come out of the estate, and the Doctor's talking about how the Earth is spinning at 1,000 miles an hour and all that. We all remember that scene. And I'm just certain I remember sitting down next to her as that scene was on and watching the episode 3 to the end, and just from there, that was it. I was hooked. Like I was in on Doctor Who, even having missed the first 15 minutes and the whole sort of setup of the episode. I was hooked, and I definitely watched through the whole of that series onwards. Like I was definitely back to watch End of the World next week, and from there all the way. I mean, it did become a funny thing where I think it wasn't until about 2009 or 2010 I actually saw the first 15 minutes of Rose. Because I never got a DVD of it, and I missed the repeats, and so I never actually got to see those. It's quite exciting. Oh wait, this is like a Chris Eccleston bit I hadn't seen. What? This is really exciting when I eventually got around to it. But so I'm pretty sure that's kind of where it started from. So kind of I have been a fan since halfway through the first episode in 2005.
Not from the very beginning of it. It's a unique jumping on point. Skip the first 15 minutes. Just start.
Who needs that? Who needs that? Exactly. And then because my mum, she still does, and she worked in the local library, so she was then able to get loads of VHSs and DVDs of the classic stories out of the library for me. So I'm pretty sure Avenger of the Cybermen was the first one I saw from the classic series. I just remember the picture of Tom and a Cyberman on the front cover and watching that, and then I definitely watched a reasonable amount of classic Who back then, sort of through that, because I was just obsessed with Doctor Who, everything. Get all the action figures at Christmas, the DVDs at Christmas. I had the TARDIS play set, everything.
You're describing my Christmases here as well. Yeah,
exactly. So that really is how it all started, and it pretty much has stayed constant from then. There was a little period in 2012 where I kind of dipped away from it a little bit. I can't remember quite why. I guess it was just growing up. I was mid-teenage years. You're at a school where Doctor Who would become uncool, and so you didn't really want to mention the fact that you're a Doctor Who fan. And I think I just kind of went through that little phase of not kind of loving it as much through kind of 7A, 7B around that sort of time.
Yeah, it was odd. I was about to ask if there was any point you dipped out, and it's funny you say that because I had a very similar thing around. I think it was series 7. I think it was about series 6 for me. But like I say, I was a teenager. Like I say, you're growing up. There's lots of things going on, and I still watched every week. But I remember that was probably when I'd say my passion for the program was at its lowest. And like you say, at school, Doctor, it's weird because I remember in primary school, David Tennant era, Doctor was like the coolest thing. Like everyone chatted about it. And then weirdly going to high school, which for me roughly coincided with when Matt took over. It then all just suddenly switched, and everyone's like, "No, I'm too." Again, it's probably that teenage thing, like, "Oh no, don't do Doctor anymore." But it's just so weird, isn't it? How it literally all just. It sounded like you had a similar experience. How it all just flipped in the school sense. Like 1 minute it was the hot thing, and then it was like, "Nah, can't talk about it." It's mad.
Yeah, it sort of feels like I went from that kind of being a child Doctor Who fan, a childhood Doctor Who fan. I went through my kind of period of not being into it so much, and then I became back to being almost like a grown up. I don't know, nerdy Doctor Who fan. I don't want to say that in a bad way at all. Just kind of, I've transitioned from just child who really likes Doctor Who to properly obsessed person, like, you know, adult or becoming adult person who really loves the show. And I think my only kind of, you know, looking back on it, disappointment with that is it coincided with the majority of 2013 when there was so much else going on in Doctor Who that I missed out on because I just wasn't into the show that much in a lot of that year. I think it randomly actually was an episode of Tomb of the Cybermen on Watch. If you remember that TV channel, W or Watch.
Watch.
That used to show some random classic Who stories that was showing some running towards the 50th, I think, somewhere around then. And I just stumbled across it and I was like, oh yeah, that's Doctor Who. That's really great. I love it. I remember I used to love this. And then I think I proceeded from then to go on to Daily Motion and watch basically every story from the War Games through to, I think, Robots of Death in about 6 weeks. Something like that. The whole of Pertwee and half of Tom Baker in about 6 weeks. And that's it. I was hooked again. You know, kind of the classic series almost brought me back into it. And then Capaldi became the Doctor and that was it for me. I was all in, basically.
Oh, Daily Motion. Yeah, for anyone...
Daily Motion Classic Who, yeah.
For anyone who doesn't know, it's amazingly, for everyone, you know, we all complain about copyright on YouTube. Unofficially, you didn't hear this from me, listeners, but you know, just Daily Motion. You can type in a story. So some things might come up, some things might not. But
indeed,
but who needs
to do that?
Yeah, no one ever did that. But no. So I mean, yeah, you were very much then one of, like myself, you know, the ones who came in when New Who came back, and then again, like myself, got into Classic Who pretty soon after, which I think is a great time as a kid to get into Classic Who, because you're not so much focused on, oh, the effects look bad or this it's all about like the imagination of it and how good the story is, you know. So I think that's always a good time to get into it. And before we close out there, new for season 4, as I've been saying to listeners, we've got 3 little questions for you, which is cool. I know it's on the spot, but don't worry, this should be all good. So the first one is titled "The One I Love." And this, I could be all romantic and say you can now do a dedication to Megan, but unfortunately that is not the premise. This is basically, you know, this is a story. It's not necessarily your favorite Doctor Who story, but it could be a Doctor Who story that, you know, when you express your love for it, other fans or other people go, oh, that one, you know, like that one's terrible, but you're like, oh, but I like it. It can be a favorite story if you want, but yeah, just What's the one story you have like the most love or adoration for whatever reason?
That's a really tricky question. So I see you. Are you just before I say, are you going to ask me what my favorite ever episode of Doctor Who is? Will that be a question?
That's not specifically a question, but yeah, this one can be your favorite episode. Okay,
well, no, just so that because I don't want to pick that. I just wanted to say that my favorite episode is Heaven Sent. That would be kind of, if I was talking to somebody, I'll watch a favorite episode. That would be it.
Yeah,
but probably the one that I'm kind of most kind of fond of. I mean, I would actually look back to the classic series more than you who. I know also there's Rose, but the classic series, it's so tricky because I've kind of got 3 in my head, but that's cheating. I can't pick 3, can I?
Do you know what? I'll let you have 3. It's I say you've got so many stories to pick from. It's not an easy thing.
I'll offer up 3, and then that will make me reach a conclusion on one.
Go for it.
So the 5 Doctors would be a first, just because it's such a warm, heartwarming Doctor Who story. You know, you've got all these Doctors in there. It's so much fun. It's so celebratory. It's something. It's one of those stories that I could go back and watch as many times as I liked. Like Heaven Sent, I love, but I couldn't watch it every week. But 5 Doctors, I could just watch, you know, as many times, and I'd always enjoy it. It'd always be fun. It'd always be great.
Great story.
So that would be one of them. Then the other 2, now this is one that always I get into trouble for saying is the Invasion of Time.
Yes, I love the Invasion of Time.
I love
yes,
I love it.
Yeah.
It's I've always been a sucker for Time Lord stories. I'm not going to deny it. I love stories set on Gallifrey with the Time Lords. I just have a thing for it. It's I just find the civilization fascinating. I know people are saying they're all boring old sort of politician-y people. I know, but there's just so much. We so rarely get much of an insight into the Doctor's home world, his people, his past, all of that. And so these brief glimpses where we end up on Gallifrey are just great. And yeah, the story's a bit bonkers. And yes, it looks, it's a bit low budget in places, but it's so weird and mysterious seeing, Tom Baker seemingly siding with the villains for the first 3 episodes for no apparent reason. Like, we've had no context to why he's agreeing this treaty with the Vardens to take over Gallifrey, become the president, all of this.
Yeah.
And it takes until about episode 3 to realize, oh wait, this is the Doctor's plan all along.
Yeah.
And he's just walked in and become the president, and that's it. He's just done it. It's great that just the Doctor could do that. And then obviously, episode 4, the story's all done. Oh wait, okay, let's go home. Hey, we defeated the Vardens. Oh, hello, there's the Sontarans. Let's cut it out 2 episodes. And then always, as a child, this was so nostalgic to sort of. I loved it because it explores the inside of the TARDIS.
Oh,
and as a kid, I just found that absolutely fascinating. Sure, you look at it now. Yes, it's a mental hospital, and it's going in the same rooms, same staircases. Yes, it looks pretty, and it's a swimming pool and whatever. Yes, I know. But as a child, that was fun, so fascinating to see this massive world that we never get to see into because they can't afford it. Actually getting to see that was just so much fun. So I always have so much kind of, just a heartwarming feeling for that. It's a story I love. I will always defend it to people. I can see the faults, but I love it. So, that's just the way it is.
I'm so glad you said that. I love the Invasion.
There we go. It's great. But yeah, I understand people don't, but I do. And then my one other one, just quickly, is Ambassadors of Death.
Another
from John Pertwee. It's I just love, the Pertwee era is probably my favorite era of Classic Who. So that was a good starting point. And then Ambassadors of Death, it's so, there's so much going on in it. It feels like a bit of a mini James Bond film at points. The action sequences when they're, trying to, there's helicopters, there's people flying off motorbikes, there's explosions, the Doctor going up into space in a spacecraft and meeting these mysterious people up in space. I just, sure, it's quite long. I won't deny it's quite long, but I don't know. I just find it feels like it's so fast paced despite being so long because there's so much action to it. What's the name of the director? I can't remember his name. I really should know the director's name because he directed I think Claws of Axos as well and the Ice Seas of Death. Michael Ferguson.
Oh, was that one of? Yeah.
I think that's one of his, and he's great on the documentaries as well, talking about the way that he created some of these action sequences. And I just always find that story really, really, really just gritty and exciting. Sure, it's a very, in many ways, quite a dark season of Doctor Who, but I just find that's one of the really serious, gritty, exciting, action-packed Classic Who stories. And so I think I've got to pick Invasion of Time overall. Yes. I'm talking about all 3. Invasion's got to be the one. That's got to be the one.
Good
choice.
I
do love those other 2 as well.
Good choices all around, I've got to say. But yeah, the Invasion of Time. I'm glad there's another person.
I'm sure nobody else is going to say that. No one else is going to say that.
Well, at least you've said it. That's yours.
Exactly. Yes.
Awesome. Well, the second one is called One and Done, which basically means, is there a Doctor Who story where you've watched it and in your head you've gone like, I'm either never going to watch that again, or one step better, I'm not going to watch that for a very, very long time. Do you know what I mean? So
wow, yes.
Like, is there any that spring to mind like that, where you watched it and thought, not going to revisit this one in Ari?
I mean, an obvious recent choice would be Orphan 55. Like, it just didn't do it for me. I don't have any desire to go back and watch that again. Really,
that's fair.
Actually, quite kind of, I don't know if it's ironic, but another story I'd pick from the classic series would be Underworld, which is the story before Invasion of Time.
It is.
But I watched that story about 6 months ago in a marathon, something like that, and it's just so slow. It's really a dull,
very
plot.
ropey.
And obviously, as much as I love the experimentation, deciding to have basically CSO blue screen the whole background for everything because they couldn't afford it. I love the fact that they tried that, but clearly it doesn't work and it looks awful. But it would be helped if the story was good, but the story is also incredibly dull. And so that's probably one of those where I can't, I'm never going to pull that DVD off the bookshelf and go, I want to watch that today. I'll watch it probably in a marathon in 7-8 years time, but I'm never going to pull it off the shelf. So there's probably a few like that, but that's just one that sprung to mind.
Do you know what? Whereas with the Invasion of Time, you might be the only one who put it for that question. I've got a horrible feeling Underworld and Orphan 55 might crop up again. Who knows? They might. They might do.
Just maybe. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. I'll have to do like a score sheet at the end, see which story appeared the most.
Most common, yes.
Most common. And then the third one, we sort of touched on it earlier, but I've called this one Back to Square One, which basically is, a story. Well, I guess you're sort of doing it with Megan, and we touched on it earlier. A story where someone's getting into Doctor Who. Where do you start? I think you touched on Rose, obviously, for the new series. Would you say would you solidify that answer for this one? Do you think? Would you say Rose on the whole, or
I feel like
first ever episode someone seeing?
Yeah, I would generally say Rose, particularly if you. I guess it depends who, kind of to an extent, who you're talking to. Like if you get the impression that they're probably going to enjoy it, I would go with Rose, because obviously, as more and more time passes, as great as Rose is, the special effects are starting to look a little bit ropey. And some people will criticize that because, some people are like that, want to find faults with programs.
Yeah.
And so that's why I might say actually the 11th Hour is as good an episode to start with, because again, it's a complete, almost a reboot. There's there's nothing you really need to know from the previous series to be able to follow that and understand what's going on. It's a very different type of Doctor Who. It's very much more kind of fairy tale in style, but I think it's also it's very easy to get into, very easy to relate. A young Amy and Matt Smith's Doctor and all of that. I think it's just another great starting point, introduction to the show. So I feel like maybe as time goes on, that might actually become the better starting off, sort of jumping on point, possibly, than Rose. Yeah. But I feel like for a lot of people, you just go for it with Rose. And because you got the End of the World, that's also really fun to kind of carrying on from that. And then you get that kind of covering off all the different things you've done, Quite Dead as a historical. Yeah. Then the Slovene, which I personally have a soft spot for, as much as people don't always love that two-parter. I love it. Yeah. And going on from there. So I feel like for New Who, that's the jumping on point. For Classic Who, I would always say Spearhead from Space is probably the easiest jumping on point.
Ooh, good choice, yeah.
Just because it's the start of an era. Again, it's that same reboot, but it's also a really, really good story. It's a great place to start for that reason, because you can't, as great as Tom Baker is, you can't start with Robot. You'd have no idea what's going on with all these interesting characters.
Yeah, that's
so true. Whereas Spear from Space, as much as they brought the Brigadier in Web of Fear and the Invasion, you don't really need to know that to watch it. So I feel like that is a great Classic Who starting out as a jumping on point.
It's also a great one to mislead people, because you can get the Blu-ray and be like, look at this old story in HD.
Yes.
And they'll go, are they all like this? And you go, well.
Let's watch the Silurians, where it's all barely in colour.
Yeah, the VHS version where the colour flickers in and out. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you get to Ambassadors of Death. That's probably even worse.
Oh,
but
do you know what? I find Ambassadors of Death great to watch in black and white. I don't know if you've ever tried it. I think it's really good in black and white. So
I think it fits the style of the story, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
It feels like such a classic kind of action movie, action story style. And I think that because the color in places is so ropey, in some ways it's less distracting and just nicer to just watch it in black and white and just go with it down that route. I almost maybe hope that they would kind of, when they do it with On the Collection, maybe include a black and white version. They probably won't, but it kind of would be quite nice if they did, just because the color isn't that great and give people options. But
Chris Chapman, friend of the show, you listening?
Yes.
You want to put that forward to your boss? Yes.
Black and white and Masters of Death, yes, please.
That would be so good. That'd be so good. Yes. Fingers crossed. Maybe, never know. Maybe stranger things have happened in this fandom.
They did a second version of Collie in Space just to give us a couple of inches of extra picture frames. So
so you can give us a new version of Ambassadors of Death. Make it happen, BBC Studios.
Yes, do it.
Well, Elliot, we're reaching the end of the show, so thank you again so much for joining me today. You've been an absolute joy. And,
thank you for having me. It's been really, really great fun. Actually, it's been great to talk. You delve into the past of my channel. I kind of haven't really thought about all these old things from my channel for a while. It's great fun.
I bring up all the old videos you don't want to remember. So, you're not the first guest who said that.
It's all been good fun.
It is. Before I give you a chance to just shout out your stuff, is there any in terms of EMS Productions? What's next? Can you tease anything or reveal anything that's coming up, or is it all sort of up in the air at the minute?
Well, I mean, I don't know exactly when this is going to be going out, but there probably won't be that many videos that soon, because I'm getting married and everything. That's a big thing that's obviously happening. So come, September, October, depending when this is going out, that's when Megan Rex will be back. We'll finish off Series 10 from there, which is really, really exciting. Obviously, the podcast is going to keep carrying on, and Series 13, there's going to be lots of stuff around that. We might do reactions to that. There's definitely be lots of discussion around it and things as well, because I think it's going to be a really, really interesting season. As much as I don't love Christian Wilder's Doctor Who, I'm really looking forward to the season. But I'll leave it at that because, we could probably do a whole other podcast on the Christian era.
Oh, we could. Absolutely. Oh, well, hey, exciting things to come in the not too distant future. Indeed. And congratulations on the wedding coming up. I'm sure you'll have a fantastic
day. Thank you very
day.
much. Thank you. It's going to be very, very exciting. Yes, thank you.
Very exciting time. So just before you go then, Elliot, please feel free to shout out whatever you like.
Yeah. Okay. So obviously EMS Productions on YouTube. I'm also at EMS_Productions on Twitter. And I've got a Twitter account for the podcast. It's at Kavam Pod on Twitter as well. So you can go and check that out there for the latest sort of links to the podcast updates of that as well. But yeah, really YouTube and Twitter is the place to keep an eye on me, keep in contact with what's going on and everything. And that's where all the updates are. So yeah, check them out.
Awesome. Well, there you go, guys. Go and follow Elliot on all those social medias. Listen to Kavam. Check out his channel. Lots of great content on there that we've talked about here as well. So, yeah, I've got to remember my links now. If you've watched on YouTube, hello, and thank you for watching. Please leave a like if you enjoyed. Let us know what you thought in the comments down below, anything we talked about, any feedback. If you're listening on Spotify, hello, or any other audio devices, there's no real way to comment on those platforms. So, you can either do it on YouTube, say you came from there, or follow me on Twitter, Adam Martyn AMTV. Let me know what you thought. Just tag me or send me a DM. Just things like that. It's great to hear your feedback. And on YouTube, if you're watching here, it's Adam Martyn. Drop a like, drop a subscribe. Helps the channel out. So all that's left to be said is, once again, Elliot, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks a lot. Cheers.
No worries. And for you guys listening or watching, I'll catch you next time.